Sneaky Nation, in this episode of Warframe, we're going to go over formas, what they do, why you should get them, how to acquire them, and we're also going to use our first one officially in the series. Now, it's not the first time I've ever used one. I have used a few on different Warframes and weapons, but I've never used one in the series. I've kind of talked about it a little bit, kept kind of hinting that this episode was going to come for a long time, but haven't gotten around to it, but it's finally the day to go over it. So you may have heard the term Forma before, you don't know what it is. A lot of you I know for a fact know what they are, and probably want to chime in, add some additional information I don't cover in the video, so feel free. This isn't really going to be too in-depth. I'm just going to go over a basic understanding of what they are, and then we're going to use it on a very familiar weapon, probably the most loyal weapon I've been to in the series up to this point. I'm sure a lot of you can already guess what that is if you've been around this long. Anyways, first up, we're going to go over how to acquire them. Now, they're often rewarded for completing various missions. I even got one playing with Ace when we went back to redo the Cicero Crisis event. Now, you can't still do the event to get the Wraith Twin Vipers, however, you can still actually go through the process of reinitializing it, and you still get a form at the end apparently, because we did it like twice, I think, and we got forms both times. Still pretty interesting, but you can also get blueprints, which I found actually pretty easy to get. If you go to Void Missions, Survival specifically, you can actually get a lot of them, and I've done so many 30+ minute runs on there, and I'd say more than half the time I've gotten at least one form of blueprint, because you get a reward every 5 minutes, so the odds of getting them are pretty high, I'd say. I actually built up a stockpile of like 60+ before I even built my first one, and that's why the series actually took a while before I started getting more powerful in it, even though I had put so much time into it up to that point. But anyways, the build requirements are actually a little bit annoying because it does require 4 different rare resources. However, they're not really all that difficult to acquire. Number 1, the Morphics. You can get so many of those just by going to Mars and going to the Dark Sector missions, specifically defense. There are perks and benefits to different variations of the Dark Sector, like in survival missions you're going to face a lot more enemies in a shorter period of time, so there's a higher chance of enemies dropping resources. However, there's also the downfall of the fact that your teammate could kill somebody way on the other side of the map and then you have to go backtrack to find it. A lot of times they won't even mark it with a waypoint like you typically want to do if you're farming with a group of people. But on defense missions, you're typically playing on a much smaller map, so the chances of you finding all the resources that drop are very high if you're running around constantly, not just defending one point. And the downfall to that is, of course, the fact that there are fewer enemies spawning, but they kind of even out, so whichever way you prefer to do it. I prefer defense personally, and I've found so many different runs on Mars, specifically where I've gone 5 or maybe even more Morphics on a run. Not even really staying that long, like maybe 20 waves. That's really not all that long. It's pretty easy too. Mars is one of the beginning missions, beginning planets rather. And then Neurodes, you can get those on Earth, you can get them also on Eris, and they even drop on the Orokin Derelict missions as well. However, I'd say the best way to get them is probably going to Earth and playing Excavation. There a lot of enemies will spawn. You can also do Dark Sector missions as well. I mean, even going to Eris, the enemies are a higher level, however, they're also just the Infestation faction. They're the easiest faction in the game to play, so just going to play something where a lot of them spawn on there as well can benefit in that regard as well. And then Neural Sensors, those drop pretty commonly from Malad V, who's the boss on Jupiter. There are a lot of times where he'll drop 2 at once, sometimes he'll only drop 1, a lot of times he'll drop none, but if you play that like an hour straight with a good team, just run through it several times, you'll probably get at least 4 to 6, I'd say. At least, if not more than that. And then Orchid Cells, I'd say are probably the most difficult to acquire. Those can drop on Saturn, and a lot of people specifically run the boss, Sagaris Rock. I found that to be probably the most effective way. Like, I've gone into the Dark Sector on Saturn, and there have been so many times where I've gone up to 20 waves and I haven't seen a single drop. So I'd say probably going to farm Ruck is the best way to do it. And then, of course, 35,000 credits isn't really too shabby. You do, however, have to wait 24 hours, and you cannot have multiples building at the same time. So right now I have a pretty large stockpile of blueprints for it. I'd probably want to start building those right now. I'd do 1 a day, and then hopefully remember to go back 24 hours from now if you don't play this every single day. Even just logging in to go and acquire and then start building the next one, so on and so forth. But anyways, enough of that jibber jabber. So what do formas do exactly? Well, it's a good question. So they can be applied to either your warframe, your weapons, all three of them, or even your companion. So just for example, we're going to do it on the Wraith Twin Vipers, which I'm sure a lot of you have guessed that was the weapon I was hinting at. These have been the weapon I've been the most loyal to. They've been in more episodes than any other weapon in the series up to this point. Probably more than half, I'd say. And they weren't even necessarily used in most of them. They were still equipped though. But anyways, let's go into upgrade. So you may or may not know that you can install on your weapons an Orokin catalyst, which is kind of difficult to get. There are oftentimes developer streams will actually spawn in an alert mission you can do to acquire one. They also spawn in the different operations. It's often the first reward that's given to you for like in 5 points or something, and then if you keep going you get the sigils and so on and so forth. But if you go into actions on PS4 pressing R3, or on Xbox One I'm sure it's pressing the right stick in as well, and then on PC you can just go down there and click. You can install the Orokin catalyst, which I've already done, and that by itself upgrades your available point capacity up to double. So the Wraith Twin Vipers have been at rank 30, the max rank, for a long time, and they came pre-installed for completing the Cicero Crisis event. That was the reward for getting the most points on that. And they came installed with the Orokin catalyst anyway, so I didn't have to actually put one of my own in there, so that's good to know. But you can also come in here after you have a Forma and polarize it. So what this means is, actually let's just go through the process of doing it. So basically you're going to choose an empty slot, and then you're going to choose a polarity icon, the little icon on the top right of every spot that I keep talking about so many times in different episodes throughout the series. And that's going to allow us to make our weapon more powerful, obviously, because it's going to cut the points required to equip something in half if I put something that matches the polarity there. Which you can see right now, concussion rounds, I'm matching the polarity with that one because same icon, same spot. So that's normally 6 points, it's down to 3, cuts it in half. So naturally if we put another one in here, obviously of a different kind, like if you look at my current loadout, I have 1, 2, 3 V-shaped ones, 4 V-shaped ones, oh even 5, missed that one. But when I'm going through the process of considering which one to do, I go for whichever one has the highest points because it makes the most sense. You're going to get more points that way. So obviously the most on any of these is 11, which we have 3 different ones, and they're all V-shaped, so naturally it makes the most sense to put one of those in here. So we're going to go over to polarization, and we're going to put it just down here for now. And then if you keep clicking it, if you're in console, it will change whichever one you're going to put here. So don't make the mistake of putting the wrong one, and then when you choose which one you want, the V-shaped one in this case, you just hit the apply button at the bottom. Okay, now applying the new slot polarity will expend a Forma and reset this item to unranked, are you sure? So this is kind of similar to prestiging in the Call of Duty series if you play that online. You get up to the max rank and then you reset back down to 0 and then you build your way back up. The purpose in this game though is to actually make yourself more powerful because you'll have more points available to equip other mods, naturally making you able to build your stats up much higher. So it makes sense to do this. Now it's back to unranked. So we have to re-rank it up, unfortunately, but once we get back up to 30, we're going to be able to equip more mods than we were able to before, so it's obviously worth it. Oh, it's going to be so weird. I haven't used these unranked in such a long time. So you can do this to any weapon you have, your primary, secondary, your melee. You can even do it to your warframes. And it really does make it more powerful, so it's worth going through the hassle of re-ranking it up, and it's going to benefit you in the long run. So it's more of a long-term benefit than a short-term one. Anyways, everybody, I do hope you enjoyed. Please be sure to click like and favorite if you did. If you happen to be new around here, join us in Seeking Nation by clicking subscribe. And I will, of course, see you next time.